Rome. Night. Two men crouch over a marble tomb in a darkened crypt, straining to pry it open. The stone won't budge. They abandon it, descend deeper, find another tomb. This one opens. They lift out human bones, wrap them in silk, and slip away before dawn. Grave robbers? Treasure hunters? No. These are agents of one of the most educated men in Europe. And he wrote about this proudly. This wasn't a crime. It was an act of supreme devotion. To understand what's happening in that Roman crypt, we need to understand who sent those men there and why. Einhard was Charlemagne's biographer, a court intellectual fluent in Latin, steeped in classical learning. After Charlemagne's death, Einhard turned his energy to a monastery he founded at Seligenstadt near Frankfurt. To make it prestigious, he needed one thing above all: relics, the physical remains of saints. Italy was the source. Rome and its surrounding cities held centuries of accumulated martyr remains from the age of persecution, and just as manuscripts of classical texts flowed northward across the Alps to fuel the Carolingian intellectual revival, relics flowed north to fuel the spiritual economy. Both were precious commodities. Both conferred prestige on whoever possessed them. One key term here: when medieval sources describe the movement of relics, they call it translation, translatio in Latin. This has nothing to do with translating languages. Translation means the physical transfer of a saint's remains from one place to another. It was a formal concept, almost a genre of literature. And Einhard's account of acquiring his relics is one of the best examples we have. The story reads like a heist thriller, and Einhard tells it with relish. His agents travel to Rome under cover of night. Their first target, the tomb of St. Tiburtius. They strain against the marble lid. It won't move. The stone is too hard, the seal too tight. They give up. But below, in the lower level of the crypt, they find the tomb of two other saints, Marcellinus and Peter, Roman martyrs executed together in the early 4th century. This time the stone lifts. They reach inside and carefully remove the bones of Marcellinus. Then comes a remarkable moment. The deacon accompanying Einhard's agents insists they go back. Marcellinus and Peter were companions in life, he argues. Executed together, buried together, you cannot separate them. So they descend again, retrieve Peter's remains as well, and then, with great care, they replace the tombstone, quote, so that no trace of the body's removal would remain. Einhard records all of this not with shame, but with pride. The secrecy wasn't guilt. It was strategy, protecting the relics from rival collectors who wanted them just as badly. But here's where it gets really interesting. This wasn't just theft. In the Carolingian mind, the saints chose to be taken. The historian Peter Brown coined a phrase for how medieval Christians understood their saints: the very special dead. Saints weren't passive bones in boxes. They had will. They had agency. They could act in the world, and that reframes the entire heist. Tiburtius's tomb wouldn't open. That wasn't bad luck. That was Tiburtius refusing. He did not want to go. Marcellinus and Peter's tomb opened easily. That was the saints consenting. They wanted to leave Rome. They wanted to go north with Einhard's men. And once installed at Seligenstadt, the saints proved their contentment the only way the dead can, through miracles. Einhard catalogs them meticulously. Cures for paralysis, restored sight for the blind, relief from bowel disease and open sores. Each miracle was evidence, not just of holiness, but of approval. The logic was airtight within his worldview. If the saints performed miracles at their new shrine, it meant they were happy there. Miracles equaled consent. Consent equaled legitimacy. And legitimacy was exactly what Einhard needed for Seligenstadt. One miracle story captures something essential. As Einhard's emissaries carried the relics northward through the countryside, they stop in a field. A peasant approaches, hunchbacked, angry, gripping a pitchfork. He wants these strangers off his land. But when he learns what they carry, the bones of genuine Roman martyrs, everything changes. He drops to his face in adoration. And according to Einhard, he is cured. His back straightens. The villagers pour out to celebrate, insisting the relic party stay the night. It's a vivid scene, but it's also the bridge to the most important argument in this video. Right? So this peasant and Einhard inhabit the same spiritual universe. Here's the common assumption. The Carolingian Renaissance created a gap between educated elites and ordinary people. Scholars gained access to classical learning, mastered Latin, developed sophisticated theology. Peasants remained illiterate. That literacy gap was real. In fact, literacy rates in 875 were hardly greater than in 1775. Mass education was probably the Renaissance's least successful project. But here's the key insight. There was no corresponding piety gap. Einhard, biographer, Latinist, courtier, believed in the active power of dead saints' bones with exactly the same conviction as the peasant with the pitchfork. Look at the evidence side by side. Literacy, completely different. Access to texts, worlds apart. But belief in saints' agency, identical. Belief in miraculous cures, identical. Reverence for relics, identical. Educated people were not more skeptical. Einhard didn't write about relics, ironically or metaphorically. He wrote with total sincerity. His education made him more articulate about his belief, not less believing. So what does all this tell us about the Carolingian Renaissance and about the relationship between education and belief? The Renaissance is often presented as enlightenment filtering down. But the relic culture shows us something more interesting. Elite literacy rose, popular literacy barely moved. That gap grew over the 8th and 9th centuries, but shared supernatural belief. It held steady at every level of society. That gap never existed. The most literate man in the empire didn't believe in relics despite his education. His education gave him the tools to write eloquently about his belief. Intellectual sophistication and supernatural conviction were not in tension. They coexisted comfortably, completely, in the same mind. This challenges a modern assumption that rationality and supernaturalism exist on a spectrum. In every era, including our own, the line between elite and the popular belief may be far thinner than we assume.